Welcome everyone to our November Learn at Lunch. We're glad you could join us today. And just to go over a few housekeeping rules, I'd like to tell you to be able to use the chat to introduce yourself and make comments and questions and discussion throughout the presentation, although I have been told the chat is disabled. So I'm going to work on that once we get started. And so hopefully that does become enabled. I also, there should be a Q&A that hopefully you can access too, and you should be able to ask questions. Please reserve your questions till, I mean, you can ask them now, but we're going to have a time about 15 minutes before 1 that we can answer questions. So we'll enjoy the discussion of our guests today, and then we will go ahead and have time for questions and answer. I'm going to pass it on to Sonia to start us in a word of prayer.
Yes, hello and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I just want to let you know that I was able to enable the webinar chat, so you should be able to have access to that. But maybe Kim can verify. All right, well, let's just open up in prayer here. Father God, thank you so much for this opportunity to come together, Lord, to be able to hear about ways that we can support doing your work in the community. This, area around homelessness is a complex issue that we know we cannot do it by ourselves. One entity alone cannot handle, this complex need. But we do know, God, that those that are, experiencing homelessness are close to your heart, Lord God. Those that are impoverished and marginalized, God, Lord, you have not forsaken. And so we thank you, God, for this opportunity here from this amazing organization and programming to support this work, God. And I just pray that we would have open hearts to hear, but also that we would walk away with some really tangible ways that we can support, people that are experiencing homelessness in our communities, God. Thank you so much. We give this to you today in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Pranger, for opening this up in prayer. Before we continue on to our presentation, I want to give an opportunity for Vidal Espinoza, who is the president of our Delta Kappa Lambda Phi Alpha Honor Society of Social Workers, to give an announcement regarding our service day.
Thank you, Sai. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Good afternoon, everyone. In conjunction with today's webinar on homelessness, Delta Kappa Lambda will be hosting an event at the Poverello House November 11th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We will be touring the facility and supporting the Poverello House in various capacities, such as food preparation, clothing distribution, and campus beautification. I feel this event is essential to the growth of us as a fraternity, but more importantly, I feel this event is essential to the growth of us as students, especially as we look to further our education and eventually get into the social work profession. Although we may hear, read, and learn of the houseless pandemic that plagues Fresno, it is not until we go out and actually see the environment that these people live in that we can come to truly get an understanding of their everyday struggles. It is important to remember we do not become agents of change by only listening and learning, but by taking action. It is one thing for us to learn of the statistics regarding this population, but it is something completely different to go out, put our boots on the ground, and get a feel for the environment that these individuals live in. As future social workers looking to make a change in the world around us, it is essential that we are knowledgeable of the real world problems that go on in our city. It is through this event and others like it that we can come to obtain that knowledge needed to put our degrees in use and to truly make an everlasting change in the world around us. I feel this event is not only a gesture of kindness that will surely brighten up the day of all those we will help, but as a community, together we can contribute to a sense of dignity that is fundamentally important in our society. I hope that after hearing today's presentations, you will be motivated to serve with us. So if you guys have any, wear your FPU gear and come and join us. Thank you for your time, and I'm excited to see you all November 11th at the Poverello House. Thank you, Sai. I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Vidal, for that. And we just want to emphasize that this service opportunity is not limited to FPU students, so we welcome the public as well. I just entered my email in the chat. So before the end of the day, please feel free to email me and sign up with us. And we look forward to seeing you on the 11th. Okay, so without further ado, I want us to begin our presentation. I know that all of you are here to learn on how we can better serve our community. Okay, so we have here today Phil Skei, Joe Casillas, and Steve Montes. Phil serves as an assistant director for the City of Fresno's Planning and Development Department, where he oversees affordable housing development and the homeless response team. For the past 15 years, Phil has been engaged in community revitalization work through previous roles at the City of Fresno, Fresno Housing Authority, as well as through his role as the co-pastor of the On-Ramp Covenant Church in downtown Fresno. We have Joe Casillas, who is the homeless service manager for the City of Fresno's Planning and Development Department. Joe works with our jurisdictional partners to end homelessness. Prior to working with the City of Fresno, he worked with community-based organizations that provide services to those dealing with mental health conditions and homelessness. Joe believes in the approach that whatever it takes in order to help those in need. And then finally, our other speaker is Steve Montes, who serves as the Housing and Neighborhood Revitalization Manager for the City of Fresno's Planning and Development Department. He oversees the Homeless Assistance Response Team, also known as HART. For the past 17 years, Steve has been in public service and has been passionately serving. Steve successfully developed and implemented proactive rental inspection programs and helped in the development of Fresno's Heart Code program. Okay, so the City of Fresno, along with the Homeless Assistance Response Team in collaboration with other local organizations, have been at the forefront of addressing homelessness in Fresno. And so join me in welcoming Phil Skei, Joe Casillas, and Steve Montes as we learn how local organizations and helping professionals are addressing care for homeless individuals and families. As we explore current local homelessness trends and data, alternative solutions to care, and advocacy actions to address homelessness.
Thank you, Sai, and thank you to all of you who have joined us, all 34 of you. So glad that you are with us. As Sai said, my name is Phil Skei. I'm Assistant Director of the Planning and Development Department here at the City of Fresno, and with me today are two of my colleagues, Steve Montes and Joe Casillas, who are really the two that lead our work. Steve's going to share. We have a presentation that we are going to use to kind of guide our time today. Want to acknowledge that we're tackling a very large subject matter in a very limited amount of time. We're going to try and wrap up our presentation around 12:45 to leave some time for a Q&A. So we'll be moving quickly. I also wanted to just offer as a bit of a framework for all who are here today for this panel. I want to remind everyone that what we're sharing today is the model for homeless response in the city of Fresno. So just a reminder that this is the role that we understand is appropriate for government to play in homeless response. It is not comprehensive in nature. We fully recognize that that coming alongside and assisting those who are experiencing homelessness with opportunities to exit homelessness cannot be done by government alone. Matter of fact, shouldn't be done by government alone, and we really need a wide array of community partners, and many of you on this call represent those partners. So let's just jump in. Steve's going to walk us through. We have a number of resources here at the City of Fresno that have been dedicated since 2021 to responding to homelessness and assisting those that are experiencing homelessness. Steve, can you go to the next slide, please? So overall homelessness, this is a picture of what it has looked like in our broader community. And for those of you that really have a background in homelessness, you understand that in terms of response, we never think about homelessness as a city specific challenge. It is a community wide challenge. There are a lot of things I could say about that, but really the way that we approach it as a community is through an entity that we're all part of called the Fresno Madera Continuum of Care. And within this continuum, it is comprised of service providers and local agencies and advocates. But jurisdictionally, it covers the city of Fresno, the city of Madera, Fresno County, and Madera County. So you can see what has happened as it relates to overall homelessness over the last few years. You can see that 80% of all who are homeless or experiencing homelessness reside in the city of Fresno. And so most recently, we conducted a point in time count together with all the members of the Continuum of Care. And as you can see, homelessness overall went down 5.6% from 22 to 23. The largest increase, the largest jump naturally was from 2019 to 2020 as COVID kind of came upon us. And then of course, from 2020 to 2022 in the thick of the pandemic. That to say, while I will not, I won't point to the pandemic as a cause of homelessness. I think it's very clear that the economic impact of the pandemic, coupled with rental costs, inflation more generally, have really resulted in an increase in homelessness. And so this is the environment that we're in today. All right, Steve, next slide. Steve, are you gonna? I think you're gonna cover this. Is that right?
I just wanted to provide some information from a couple of studies that had been conducted. One is the University of, or UCSF, University of San Francisco, right? University of California, San Francisco, where we tried to get a statewide study, but also portions of Fresno, as well as a study that was included in our application for Encampment Resolution Funds number 2, which you all helped with. Fresno Pacific University actually helped us out with some of those survey studies. I think Joe has some information on this, but we did just want to point out some of the key factors or some of the key data points. So do you have something, Joe? Okay, so again, just some of the identifying factors where this is a UCSF study, how people identified themselves. So it was other female or male is how they self-identified. And you can see majority of the unhoused population, 69%, is male within our region, statewide. And then also the Soul study from Fresno Pacific, 71% identified as male. And so you kind of see the same patterns. Again, female, 31% in the region, 30% statewide, and then the Soul study was 29%. Then we have some demographic information by age, and you can see where the population is. Majority of the unhoused population is between the age of 41 and 50. So representing 26% of the unhoused. And this is from the Soul study. And again, it's pretty much in line with what we see from UCSF. 21 to 30-year-olds, 12%, 31 to 40-year-olds, 21%. Again, the majority, 41 to 50-year-olds, 26%, 51 to 60-year-olds, 22%, and then the 60 plus is 17%. We also got some information regarding, and this is from the UCSF study, regarding emergency department visits in the last 6 months by age. And you can see up to 3 visits, and all age groups experienced that. And here are the percentages. So 38%, 37%, and 4% by age. 50 plus 37% all experienced emergency room visits.
So Steve, thanks for that. And just, I think the overarching picture that we want all of you to hear and understand is that those that are experiencing homelessness demographically are aging. And so someone that is who is experiencing homelessness today, when compared to 10 years ago, is older today than they were on average when we looked at demographic studies a decade ago. You're also seeing that there is a significant number of people that are naturally making visits to the emergency room. The emergency room is their primary care physician, and that's not healthy, because people are not doing preventative care. They are instead responding only to conditions that have emerged that are so unbearable that they are going to emergency rooms to be addressed. And then naturally on the healthcare system, that creates a significant burden. And so it's fundamentally problematic. When we looked at what led people to being, if we look at unsheltered homelessness specifically as a subset of all who are experiencing homelessness, those that have been on our streets are primarily there as a result of domestic violence or economic hardship. Of those who are in permanent housing, we have seen that not just domestic violence, but fractured family relationships have been a key driver to people ending up on our streets. In terms of what would most assist those that are on our streets, the feedback we have received when conducting surveys ourselves, or the more recent study done by UC San Francisco, which was a historic survey, one of the most comprehensive in our state and one of the most comprehensive across the country, is that mental health services are hugely important. That this is self-reported, that they need to be delivered on the street, not that those services are provided only in institutional settings, and that it's hard to access supportive services. So we also have found that people who have accepted shelter offerings did so because they felt safe, they were comfortable, and they liked the outreach workers. So how you do your work matters, not just that you do your work. And that's really critical from a government perspective. As we do our job, we understand that who we hire, how they approach the work really matters. And it's one of the reasons that we have subcontracted the outreach work of our team, of our agency, to the Poverello House, because it is very difficult for us to have success when the police are offering shelter, or when our code enforcement officers are offering shelter. Instead, we've got social workers that we are funding through the Poverello House, and even mental health clinicians that are doing that outreach, and we've seen that to be very, very successful. All right, Steve, next. So what has the city done historically? I mean, this is, forgive the slide. We're government workers. We don't do graphics. So historically, here's the point. We have done a number of things historically to respond to homelessness. However, the point that I want to make with this slide, this atrocious slide, is that we have not always done it in a coordinated fashion until recently. Steve, what's the next slide? So, now what we are doing today, as opposed to, our inability to really respond historically, just frankly due to resources primarily, is that we are approaching homeless response, from a housing continuum perspective. And so we recognize where our strengths are, and we're doing everything that we can to facilitate true exits to homelessness. And so it starts with homeless street outreach, and may include emergency shelter, may include triage, usually does, may include transitional housing, often does, and true homelessness, exits always include some form of affordable housing. Now, that may mean that your affordable housing for you looks like family reunification, or it might look like sharing a lease with someone else. But we are helping to facilitate affordable housing development construction. To that point, when we look at the 5 years prior to 2021, and then we look at the next 5 years starting in 2021, in the last couple of years, we have already built an affordable housing pipeline that is increasing affordable housing production by 1,644% when compared to the 5 years prior to 2021. And so under Mayor Dyer's leadership, this has been an emphasis of his and his administration. And so we're making sure that we're not just providing outreach or shelter, but we are creating pathways for people to exit homelessness. All right, Steve. I think I'm gonna turn it over to Joe now. Joe's got the next few slides.
Yeah, so with the city funding the triage shelters, we also are funding services to actual homeless individuals that are on the streets. One of the main services that we provide is mobile showers and restrooms. So with the mobile showers and restrooms, they're located throughout the city at different locations, 5 days a week. We're contracted with Gracebound to provide these mobile showers. With the services that are being provided with the mobile showers and restrooms are outreach. So Gracebound is actually going out in the community and interacting with individuals in encampments and bringing them to the actual mobile showers. They are also provided snacks while at the showers, also hygiene kits and clothing. So they're basically like just a one-stop shop for hygiene. They want to make sure that our homeless community is provided this service. And then also with the mobile showers, we have UCSF Fresno's mobile clinic. So they accompany the mobile showers on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Fridays. On Tuesdays, they're over at the Poverello. And also they rotate with the clinics over on Parkway Drive at the shelters. The mobile clinic also provides the several different services. They provide health screening, heart rate, blood pressure, blood sugar, glucose screenings. They also provide COVID-19 test and treatment, different vaccines such as COVID-19 and flu shots vaccines. They also take care of wound cares and also prescription medications. And they will also do refills of medications. Next one, please.
Okay, this one's me. And so in regards to street homelessness, this is where the HEART team kind of engages with the unhoused the most. And it's in between street homelessness and emergency shelter. And I'm not going to say that it's because this is the program that oversees, not the most important, but it's probably one of the most visible. So we do get a lot of questions, but you can see it. There's there's a whole lot more that the team does regarding the unhoused. But for HEART, we have two primary goals, right? So the first goal is to protect and assess and connect unhoused persons and families with housing and resources. It doesn't always mean they go directly to shelter, but we try to do whatever we can, be it diversion, be it getting people document ready, and other sources or resources like that. Second goal is to promptly resolve quality of life issues affecting residents and businesses on both public and private property. So depending on where an encampment occurs, there could be a different response. So how does HEART function? How does HEART do this? So HEART focuses on resolving encampments because I believe that it is pretty well known that someone living in an encampment or on the street is probably the worst place for them to be. And so we recognize that, and we want to get them into the continuum and into self-sufficiency, right? It's not necessarily just, hey, you can't be here. So what we do is we try to steward the city shelter housing resources strategically. We participate in the coordinated entry. So we try to get people connected into the coordinated entry system for all of the Fresno Madera Continuum of Care shelters. So HEART also serves the community at large by responding to requests for service through 311. Remember, 311, one call does it all. That's usually where our engagement starts. Someone calls that, hey, that we're having an issue. So we'll ask outreach teams, and I'll go into some of the resources that we use. Then we strategically resolve the encampments on public property. So that's something that's a city endeavor. And then we partner with residents and businesses to restore their private properties. So again, this is a private property. It's something that we try to give resources to the private property owners to help resolve some of those issues. And ultimately, that's the goal, have them resolve it, but we can also step in and help. So these are the resources that we use. And again, it generally starts with someone contacting 311, and it could be for any reason. It could be, hey, we want some outreach services for an individual that's experiencing homelessness, or it could be, hey, somebody's on my property and they're not authorized to be there. We start with we try to lead with services. So we start with outreach, and we do contract with the Poverello House. So they are 1/4 of the team, the Hope Outreach team, the Homeless Outreach Progressive Engagement team. And so we try to get them connected to services. Beyond that, if there are, and we cannot compel people to do so, but if they don't, then we will move into the resolution process. We also utilize crisis intervention. The Fresno Police Department is another important member of the team, the HEART PD team. So again, they will address the private or public property encampments, district problem-oriented policing, and then patrols. So we use the full spectrum of PD when it's appropriate. Sanitation is also a quarter of the team. So for cleanups, public-private property, those are things that we can utilize their resources. We also partner with Economic Development and Business Watch to make sure that we're providing all the resources, not only to the unhoused, but residents. And then we partner with everybody, partner with all jurisdictional partners, or some of them are listed here: state, Caltrans, CHP, the county, other members of the Fresno Madera Continuum of Care, Fresno Irrigation District, Metropolitan Flood Control District, railroads, school districts, and parks. And again, we try to steward or shepherd everybody in to go into the shelters where we can. We also employ diversion, whatever is the most appropriate to get people into the continuum and out of homelessness. And I believe this one's going back to.
I'll take it, Steve.
Bill. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we obviously all of our response is, costs significant resource. If you look at, again, the community-wide perspective, Fresno Madera, you can see that across the board, there's been significant resources come in from both the federal, but mostly the state government, in order to provide assistance. If you go to the next slide, and that was from 2019 to December 22, the city of Fresno, as part of the larger community, has received, $109 million. This is again from July 19 to December 22. And since then, we've received, even additional resources. And one of the things that I want you to observe is that we're working very hard to raise resource to meet community needs. The leadership at the state level has been significant in providing the resources. And then we at the local level are working really hard to go after those state resources. They're all competitive. And we're north of $80 million at this point, but the slide says 59.3 million. So it's a big undertaking. In my shop, where I oversee both homeless response, which is the work of Steve and Joe and their teams, but also affordable housing, finance, and production. We're stewarding about $190 million right now. So it's a heavy lift, and it's about that housing continuum that I pointed to earlier, that if we're going to really provide adequate response as government in terms of our role, that is going to start with outreach. It will be connecting people through the coordinated entry system to services that they would qualify for, including shelter, whereby case management is provided, access to other services like rehab as needed, mental health services, etc. People move through the continuum, not necessarily linearly, but whatever the most appropriate resource is, and ultimately out of homelessness. And it just takes tremendous amount of resource to not only provide the homeless response, starting with those that are unsheltered, unhoused, but also to facilitate the 1,644% increase in permanent affordable housing production, unit production. All right, next slide, Steve. Here's sort of how the funds have been invested. You can see where they primarily go. So again, acquisition, emergency shelter, rental assistance, permanent housing. I mean, of the dollars that were listed on the prior slide, the majority is going to the housing component of the response. Lesser dollars are going to the services, but that really is the that's the balance. That is the balance, is that the housing itself is the most expensive component of homeless response. Next slide. And I see questions, by the way, in the chat. We'll pause at the end. We're almost finished with our presentation, then we'll start to respond and go back to slides as needed. So I don't want you to think we're ignoring your questions. Look forward to responding to them. State grants that we've received to help HAP, IRF, Home Key. It's again, we always have acronyms for everything, right? So homeless housing assistance and prevention, that's our HAP resource from the state. And Encampment Resolution Funding Grant, we received 2 grants. The first grant that we received, year 1, was the largest in the state. The second was the second largest in the state, and then Project Home Key. Next. Encampment Resolution Funding, this is the second year of funding that we received and the way in which we're using this. I'm going to ask Joe, who's really been the lead on this funding source, to just talk us through what the IRF2 grant dollars have enabled us to do in terms of response to our unsheltered residents. Joe?
Yeah, so the Encampment Resolution Fund, we applied for it and we received the 17 million awarded by the state. With this Encampment Resolution Fund, it focuses on the downtown encampment area, which we designated from Fresno Street, Highway 41, and Highway 99. It's kind of like a triangle downtown. With the services that we were able to fund with the 17 million was an acquisition of a shelter, and also we're currently working on affordable housing. So with the 17 million, we also were able to increase our outreach services specialists that were contracted with Poverello. We were also able to fund a licensed street clinician. That actually, we looked at the feedback that was result from one of the surveys, and a lot of unhoused individuals were stating that they want services to be out on the streets and just because they felt that it's difficult to go into an organization to receive those type of services. So one of the key parts of the IRF2 award was having a street clinician. This street clinician, like I said, goes out in the streets, it goes into the encampment areas and basically engages the unhoused individuals that are having difficulties with mental illness. We also are able to fund street navigation services, basically to provide just to start the navigation to get services that they might not meet the requirements for a shelter, but they're looking at wanting to also look at other housing options. So those navigation services will help with those services. Next slide, Steve. And these are basically the breakdowns from HAP 1 through HAP 4, basically what the city has been awarded to help fund our emergency shelters and also our outreach services. These are also our emergency shelters that are funded through the city. So basically it's a breakdown of all of our shelters and the number of beds that are available at these shelters.
Finally, you know, the way, and I saw a question about prevention, the best way that as government, right, with the resources that we are deploying, that you all as the community can assist us, is the following. First of all, I want to make sure that everyone on this webinar knows that when you see someone who is camping in our community, they are unsheltered, that you can always contact us by calling 311. It's just that simple. Just call 311 and report, hi, there is someone who is camping, or there's a group of people who are camping in a particular location. Here's the location. Here's the number of people as far as I can tell. I was driving, I didn't see it, but it's kind of what it looked like. And then our call center staff are going to ask you some questions just to determine sort of the risk factors involved in that particular camping location. So number of animals, if there are any children, you know, any criminal activity that you maybe observed, just those kinds of things. It's okay to say, I don't know, or I didn't see, or I'm not sure. But those are the kinds of questions that are going to ultimately be asked. And you just answer them to the best of your ability. That call will result in a service request that will get routed directly to Steve's team, and then they will respond. They'll start by responding, as Steve said, with outreach. It's always our first contact. If at all possible, that's going to be our first contact, where basic needs are going to be met, and direct coordination with available resources will be offered. Also, I just want to mention this, right? So there's a lot of conversation across various you know, sort of agencies and disciplines about just a warming up to the idea that housing production is not exclusively the responsibility of the private development community. But for example, State Center Community College District has taken on the responsibility of developing hundreds of new units themselves for their students. They have been a leader in this way. We would like to see other agencies, nonprofits, get into this space. We need more affordable housing, and the city, we're not a builder, we are a funder. So we need folks to develop. Further opportunities to marry supportive services with those housing developments, whether it's your development or someone else's. There is affordable housing development being developments occurring all over the city, all of the time. Many of them don't have supportive services tied to them. It's an opportunity to create a a nexus between the housing and the services that some of you are responsible for providing. Further, implement screening controls. There was again a question about prevention to connect clients who are housing insecure with resources. So we know that those that are newly experiencing unsheltered homelessness or even sheltered homelessness are connected to other systems in our community. It's just often that those other systems are not incorporating into their standard practice screening mechanisms to determine whether or not those that they are serving are housing insecure or about to become housing insecure. These are questions that could be asked, and if asked, could then result in preventing homelessness by just connecting those that are experiencing housing insecurity to available resources. It goes without saying, and you saw this with the survey that was conducted among those that had experienced homelessness recently, that services provided in the field are desperately wanted by our unsheltered community, not just services provided from a brick and mortar facility. So I want to just flag that it is a paradigm shift and a slightly different philosophy, and it requires certainly some some pliability on behalf of the service provider, and it's not always easy, and I understand that, but where that is possible, it is desired and valuable. Design programs and services that meet the needs of those that are unhoused. Again, I think Vidal invited all of us to join him on November the 11th for this very reason. And then lastly, include the broader community when providing wraparound services. So don't only think about the service you provide, but think about the services that really are a complement to what you provide, and see if you can provide them together alongside of other agencies, other partners, other departments, other institutions. The more that we can do that together, the higher quality our service provision is, and the more effective we become. All right, look at that. 12:42, 3 minutes early. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to take some questions in the order in which they are received. Actually, I think, Sai, you were going to walk us through this, weren't you, Sai?
Yes. Yeah. So thank you, Steve, Phil, and Joe for that presentation. First question is, because I think you provided a lot of really wonderful data. And I love the trends. And so we want to know, can your PowerPoint be made available to those who attended?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to hold you to it. Next question is, we are a faith institution. And so if you could share how faith or spirituality informs the work or the commitment to house people and families.
Yeah, I'll say quickly. I mean, much of this work has been driven by, really started under the Dyer administration. And so I think, it's widely known that Mayor Dyer, is a man of faith and talks about it publicly. He's talked about it for decades. His life has been just changed and transformed as a result of a relationship with Jesus. And so, for him, this compassionate response, and we talk about a lot with the Heart team, we are trying to take not an enforcement, we're trying not to lead with enforcement or lead with new legislation that we can enforce, that in essence makes being homeless illegal. That is not our approach. That is not the philosophy that drives our mayor. And the work that Steve's doing, the work that Joe's doing, is all a result of really, the mayor's heart. And so for him, again, kind of a compassionate response to those in our community that are most vulnerable is what he wants to ensure we are expressing in all that we do. And that's why, again, Steve mentioned it, and you see it in Joe's work as well, and in his presentation. You know, we're really trying to respond with services, outreach, relationships, and connecting people, rather than what some cities are doing across the state and even across the country, but especially in California, where they're really the tip of the spear is really about forcing people to move, and even to some degree respectfully dropping people off and moving them forcibly from one community to another community. That is not the city of Fresno's approach. That is not the mayor's approach. And that is really a direct result of his Christian faith.
You know, Phil, that point that you're making, I think that really segues to this next question, which is, you know, how do we help individuals who are unhoused, and they don't want to be housed, but they still need the support and the help?
Steve, how would you respond to that? Because Steve, as the Heart team manager, your team is really making direct contact with folks. You lead the outreach work. What do we find when we encounter people who do not want shelter? How do we support? How do we serve folks in that scenario?
Yeah, so we can't compel anybody to take shelter. So we just stay engaged with them, right? Try to build rapport. It could be that they don't trust us. They don't, you know, some of the people say, hey, I've been to the shelter and I don't like it. So we stay engaged with them. We do try to do diversion, right? So if it's something that, you know, we can connect them to, you know, maybe a family member or another resources that they have, then we can do that. But we stay engaged. We don't just go out and say, here's some information, here's a shelter, and then walk away and forget about them. So the team does put their information in the HMIS, the Homeless Management Information System. And so we can share that information with other providers that are part of the FMCOC and access HMIS. So we can see, okay, how many times has this person been engaged? What are the issues that they're having? And, you know, maybe when something does become available that's more appropriate for them, where they're willing to accept, then, you know, we can do that. But staying engaged is the best way to get them to eventually take services or take action to not be unhoused. And sometimes they say, all right, Steve, after the 15th time that they've dealt with me, like, okay, you know, where's the outreach team? You know, maybe today's the day, right? And it's just on their time sometimes.
Yeah, so Steve, you emphasize the importance of staying engaged. So how is the city of Fresno, or do you work closely with adjacent cities here in the Central Valley in regards to tracking data, and more importantly, making sure that needs are met for our unhoused individuals who are transient?
Yeah, so we stay connected with other jurisdictions. The Fresno Madera Continuum of Care is primarily Fresno County and Madera County. But we do reach out, and people reach out to us, and, you know, for best practices, you know, what are you doing on this, or what are you doing with that? So we try to stay engaged as much as possible. As far as coordination, it's the unhoused tend to stay where the population centers are. So it's going to be primarily City of Fresno, County of Fresno, where we have the most coordination, and then City of Madera, County of Madera, which we don't do too much of the coordination with them, other than what we do with the FMCOC. I don't know if Joe or Phil have more insight on that as far as like regional programs. They may be some projects that I'm not necessarily aware of.
Well, I'll just say, I mean, that is the design of the continuum of care and the coordinated entry system that everybody in this continuum has committed to using. And so, and that's how you mentioned HMIS earlier, Steve, the Homeless Management Information System. That's exactly why we all subscribe to it, and how it's utilized, so that whether it's our outreach team that encounters an individual on the streets today, or whether, you know, in 3 weeks it's someone from West Care or EOC or some other agency encounters them, we all utilize the homeless management information system so that we can see what services have been offered, received, who's made contact, what someone's history is, and be able to continually pick up from wherever the last point of contact left off. And that's the design.
Okay. Thank you for that. Next question here is, how soon are applicants linked to resources? And is there any follow-up or plan to help individuals towards self-sufficiency?
So Steve, again, I think, you and then Joe, would be good to hear from you on the shelter side of things, because so many services are provided through the shelter that lead to self-sufficiency. But why don't both of you take a stab at that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's immediate if it's available, right? So if there's shelter availability and that's what the person needs, then we can get them connected to shelter. If it's not shelter, basic needs, that would be immediate. If it's getting somebody document ready so that they can go into shelter, that'd be ongoing. So it might not be something that, once we get a service request, they go out and say, okay, I'm going to pick you up and take you to the DMV to get your license. But that coordination would happen immediately. You get connected to a street navigator, you have somebody that's helping manage your case, and then they can continue to have an action plan and follow up, getting you ready if that is the service that you need, getting into services or connecting you with any other services that are appropriate.
And once they get into the shelter, or if they're offered shelter and they do accept, they're assigned to a case manager or housing navigator, which they'll work with them step by step and to get them the services that they need or that they're requesting. It could even be linkages to the county if they need mental health services or AOD services. But that case manager or housing navigator is going to be working with that individual step by step to get them, making sure that they get into some type of housing. The emergency shelter is going to be temporary, and the goal is to get them into housing, whatever that looks like for that unhoused individual that's residing at the shelter.
Okay. Joe and Steve, this question is for you. Do you guys have a specific team or team member that focuses on unhoused youths or college students? And if so, do you have direct contact information that we can utilize for future references?
Well, currently we're working with EOC, Fresno EOC. They recently we had an RFP that was out for youth services. So we did a contract with them to provide bridge housing. So usually it's been EOC that's been responding to our youth services RFP. So we kind of work side by side with EOC.
Okay.
Yeah, and so
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I was going to add, and just for outreach, the outreach will help that person get connected to EOC. It wouldn't have to be, specifically youth or anything. They would get them connected to those resources.
Okay.
Sai, I just put that in the chat. It's
perfect.
To connect with youth services that EOC offers. Anyone can text the word SAFE to 44357, and that will put them in direct contact with someone from EOC. And I forgot to mention, you should also include your location when you text that word. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Phil, for that resource. We still have a lot of questions, so we're just gonna try to move through this as quickly as possible. Another question is, with your experience and what you've observed with working with unhoused individuals and families, what would you say are the top 3 hurdles that you face when housing the homeless?
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, and Steve and Joe, we're gonna move on, but number one, someone's ability to, kind of rationally process where they are in terms of their own needs and the opportunities that are being presented to them. So I think it's just, it is a mental wellness obstacle. Secondly, it would be, I think what we see too often, and it's complex, but people who receive resources or services, often for what I think many of us would deem to be irrational reasons, walk away from life-saving resources because they didn't like the person that they're living next to, or they felt like it was, they didn't think the food that was being served was good enough, or I mean, just it's hard. And so I think that by and large, it really is centered around mental wellness, trusted relationships that can guide in key decision making moments. And then lastly, just frankly, I think that even though you see all the resources that we received and that we spend, we still don't have enough resource to be able to provide enough service to everybody that's on our streets, and that breaks our hearts.
Yeah. It looks like that's all the time that we do have for questions. And so I apologize to attendees where I have missed your question. However, we are going to save those questions. And if Phil and Steve and Joe, if you don't mind, if I could email those questions to you, and if you could respond to them and we can forward that to our attendees, I would greatly appreciate it. There are still some very good questions that remain. And so thank you all for participating in our Q&A. We thank you for your level of enthusiasm and interest in really learning about what is going on in our community. And then most importantly, I'd like to thank Phil, Steve, and Joe for your presentation today. And I love that it was specific to our community, and you provided a lot of important research data and trends for us so that we can better serve our community. So thank you for that. At this time, I'd like to give the screen time to Kim.
Yes, thank you to our panelists and to our attendees for attending today. I want to point out that I had, and I will go ahead and do it again, put the link to our survey so that you can give us feedback on how this presentation went today. We would appreciate your participation in that. Also, a reminder about the service day with Phi Alpha on November 11th, and you can reach out to Sai, and her email is also there in the chat with more questions about that. I also want to point out to you that we do have a Learn at Lunch email, so for any feedback that you have about this or future events, please reach out to us. Again, we are a work in process, and so we will be establishing a webpage real soon where you can access our previous videos as well as PowerPoint presentations and signing up to potentially be a guest speaker. So thank you again for your attendance, and we look forward to seeing you in December, 1 month, December 6th, for a presentation on disability and society and the church. And thank you again for attending.
Thank you, everyone.